What's up, y'all? It's Deep Talk with T, episode 43. Today's topic of discussion is bringing all sides of yourself to the table. Obviously, this has to be done selectively. You can't when you go into a job interview, there's a reason why you want to create a certain impression, because this is your first time meeting someone, and you want to, or the same way with like a date, you want to impress the person. Like I said, it's a first impression, so you want to leave one that makes the person want to be in your presence again. That's really all we're saying when we get into relationships with people, whether it's professionally or not professionally necessarily, because we may not want to be in the person's presence. We may think that they're good for our pockets. When it's relationships, then it's a different story. Sometimes that's not a different story, unfortunately. But being aware of which sides of yourself you're bringing to the table at any given time and why it's a wise thing to do. Now, when you're talking about being with someone, or when you're talking about a relationship that involves a person that you're engaging with not for financial gain, but because you want to be intimate with this person, and say you want it to grow and expand. Growing and expanding in that realm of intimacy and relationships involves bringing all sides of yourself to the table. And what do I mean when I say that? I mean the goofy side of yourself, the serious side of yourself, the sad side of yourself, the side of yourself that is joyful and serene and looks as meditative as you may feel even through all the other stages. I mean bringing everything that you authentically are to the table in a space that you feel safe doing so. You have to create spaces to feel safe expressing all sides of yourself. Hopefully and presumably most people have that with their parents if they're raised by them. So whoever the people are that raise you, you tend to feel comfortable expressing your authentic side of yourself. You're okay going to the bathroom, for instance, if y'all live in the same hotel room, going on a trip, or you're okay being there's so many different things that indicate whether or not we're comfortable with someone. And when you create spaces to be comfortable with people and bring all sides of yourself to the table, you create a space to truly be loved in a way that's by someone else. Now, first, you have to obviously love yourself enough to feel as if you are not going to be damaged if someone does critique you in a space where you thought was safe and it turns out it wasn't. You may be damaged but not broken, especially if you really care for someone. But the point is that being able to love all sides of yourself is a prerequisite to being able to bring all sides of yourself to the table in a confident manner, or at least in a vulnerably confident manner. Because sometimes, even when you are confident and self-aware, there are sides of yourself that aren't so machismo with the energy. They're not so out there and strong and in your face. They're more feminine, or more passive, or more on the back end, and not so, I say feminine in the yin and the yang terms, in terms of whether or not it's like assertive or more passive. And not that women aren't not that women aren't assertive, please don't get me wrong, or not that women don't have that quality, or that it has to be defined as masculine, because I know it's the 21st century, but this goes back to ancient ways of thinking, people. So don't come at me if anybody sees this and gets mad about the way that I'm putting gender assignments or whatever to particular qualities or characteristics. But anyway, the point is, even going into that, everyone has multiple sides of themselves. Some people are passive in one area and submissive or aggressive in other areas. Some people are aggressive in some areas and passive in the other areas, like completely flip-flop. There's so many different ways that people express themselves, and so many different sides that people have, that bringing all sides of yourself to the table in your intimate relationships, in your professional relationships to the extent that you can, and feel safe doing so, as if you're not going to jeopardize your employment or your livelihood. All of these things are conducive to your mental health and conducive to you building strong, authentic relationships with people based on who you really are. Because if you're bringing all sides of yourself to the table, then there's not really a question as to whether or not you're being authentic, because you're not one way with some people and a different way with other people. You may be sad at one moment and you may be happy in another moment, and you may be contemplative in another moment, and you may be feeling goofy in another moment, but you are the same person bringing all sides of yourself to the table at all times. And over time, people will get to know who you are. They'll get to know the authentic you, the real you, and then you'll be able to create real relationships, whether or not it's professionally or personally, romantically. However you are looking to create relationships with people, because we're interdependent as humans on others for survival, and always have been. Being a loner and an outcast back in the day, before humans had this shit figured out, was a death sentence, because you were just out in the wild fending for yourself, trying to get water on your own, and trying to trust. It wasn't a pretty situation to just be a loner and like antisocial and all that other shit. You had to figure out how to communicate with other humans. So over time, people learn how to show, in an attempt for power, people learn how to show certain sides of themselves. They learn how to show the sides that they think people want to see. And a lot of times, or sometimes, not even a lot of times, but sometimes people actually get really good at it. They figure out what people actually do want to see, and they figure out how to portray that really well. And part of them really may be that. A large part of them really may be that. And then they may hide the parts that aren't that, or that aren't so desirable and attractive, in an attempt to, again, maintain popularity, etc., for whatever their purpose is. So this is all an arena that we are playing in as humans. And when you know your circumstances, when you know your objectives, when you know your obstacles, when you know how you're going about shifting your tactics to get what you want, and you know what it means to you, and you really, in your body, in your mind, in every way, in your emotions, that's a very powerful one. That's, if you don't feel it, then there's no power to it. There's no drive, there's no steam, and it's gonna be dead, even if we're not even gonna go into that part. But on every level, you have to be aware of what you want, and all of these other things to be tapped into, to driving yourself to get them. And in part of doing so, and living your journey as a human, and living out your destiny, and creating and writing your story, your movie, your masterpiece, however you look at life, you are bringing either a version of yourself that's authentic, fully, or some variation of that that's watered down. And I'm encouraging you to bring the fully authentic version of yourself to the table. And as you get more and more comfortable, it may feel uncomfortable doing it if you haven't made it a habit to do yet. But the more you make it a habit to do, and the more you make it a habit to actually act on what you want. If you want to write a book, write the book. If you are really lost on how to do it, look to figure it out. If you have so many ideas that you really feel something about, and you don't want to be a jack of all trades, but you are really just trying to narrow it down, then you may have to try and experiment with shit. And you may be older, you may be younger. Like, life is a playground, and it is a fertile, in some areas, fertile soil to grow. And even in some areas that don't seem fertile, some people are built for that shit. Like fucking cactuses in the desert. They're able to soak up whatever water is in that dry ass soil. So don't look at somebody else in their environment and say, oh, you shouldn't be there because that's not fertile soil, or you can't handle that. You fucking can't handle it. Maybe that's where they thrive. So learn to let other people plants be their own people plants. And fucking, I just coined that shit, people plants. Just let that shit, let people be themselves, and you be yourself, and you just blossom at your own rate. You nourish yourself. You give yourself the time and the space to grow, and to find the things that interest you, and to give yourself to them in the name of creating yourself. Because they say life isn't about finding yourself, it's about creating yourself. How about it's about both? Because you have to find before you can create. You have to find the things that you're interested in. And we all have primal inclinations. So being able to tap back into those, if we're not already just on a fucking wave, riding it like some people who tap into them early and stay on them are, then that's, everybody is on their own wave is part of the point. So bring all sides of yourself to the table, bring them authentically, be strategic, understand that there are different circumstances and different times and places for different things, because maybe if you just meet someone, again, they may be put off. If your intention is to create a relationship with them where you can be fully authentic, they may be put off if the very first time you meet them, you start breaking down crying, trying to tell them things that are going wrong in your life, because that makes you look emotionally unstable, and those are red flags for the future or the unfolding present. So again, be self-aware, bring all sides. That doesn't mean being deceptive either necessarily. It's being aware, being authentic, and being attentive and intentional about what you're doing. But love y'all, and I'm gonna keep bringing my authentic self to the table and as an example. So peace.